We are tuned in to Fitness and Consciousness. Today's episode is the empty journal. I had this idea last night. I decided over this weekend, today is February the 11th. It's Monday, about 7:15 p.m., 7:12. I know it's not for you, but whatever time it is, this weekend I made a decision with my business to take a hiatus from teaching group classes for I don't know how long. There was a bunch of reasons that kind of led up to that decision, and nothing bad. It's mostly just it's time for me to put more effort into some things. And the way I kind of like to think of what was making sense to me was when I went to a concert, Estes Tona, amazing guitar player, absolutely amazing, kind of a gypsy flamenco style, and just incredible. And he usually plays by himself. And so he says at the beginning of the concert, and we went to Chicago to see him. He says at the beginning of the concert, he was like, it might last a few hours, or, he doesn't really know how long the show is going to last. And then he plays his heart out. Think about that. He plays his heart out. Think about that more later on, too. Plays his heart out. What does that mean? Think of more than one way of what that means. He plays his heart out for 2 hours in some absolutely amazing show. And then at the end, he's just like, well, when it's done, it's just done. A lot of it is just like this improvisational. He just kind of does what he feels like in the moment. Sometimes it's just really soft, subtle playing, and then other times it's just as intense can get. And then when the show is over, it's just over. There's no encore. Because when he plays his heart out, then it's out. It's done until the next time. He talked about kind of like trusting that process that this is going to happen when he starts to play. This, you just have to check him out. It's Estes Tona, ESTAS TONNE. He's touring around Europe right now. Definitely worth checking out. But anyways, so the way I saw the classes I was teaching, it was just time to end, and there was no hard feelings or anything about it. So I wanted to use this show as to kind of honor some of the students that were coming, honor all of them really, but there's some that I'm going to talk about, not by name, but by a lot of these are kids. I was teaching kids classes and adult classes. Then I switched to just teaching adult classes, and sometimes there are kids coming. But I have some cool stories to share about them. And I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do next, which is, some of it's just a question mark. The show, the podcast is doing amazing. So part of what I'm doing is focusing even more on the show. And right now, I decided to record during this time because this is the time I would have been at the class. So for a couple years, that's what I was doing. And man, there were some epic classes. So many good stories, so many great things that happened. And so last night, I was, I was up late, and I was just kind of laying in bed thinking about this pretty big change. And I thought about, man, it would have been cool to have all these stories written down about what happened with these students and what we were doing with my system of training, and also their stories playing out that had these classes as part of them. And so I had like this image in my mind of this empty journal so part of this episode is filling in that journal from what happened, but also the empty journal as, well, what's next? Like you just buy a journal. You don't buy journals that are already filled up, unless it's somebody else's, and those are cool to read sometimes, right? So as with most of my stuff, it's more than one thought deep. There's layers and layers and layers just in the empty journal. What does that mean? Well, you can just you can keep going with that. So the beginning of this class I was teaching, it wasn't at a regular gym. It wasn't at a gym at all. And I started out teaching like some workshops there, some kettlebell workshops, and those went well. Those were really cool. And then I talked about doing regular classes. And so the first student that I get for the kids class, I don't know if it's probably not cool to say his name. I don't think it really matters so much, really, but I won't say his name. But he started coming, and he was very strong kid, very active, very he could climb the rope. There was a rope that's probably like at least 20 feet high, 25 feet high. He could climb right up and ring the bell, no problem. And we would be doing all kinds of stuff. So we'd have like foam arrow wars and lifting logs and playing on the monkey bars. And a lot of times with the kids' classes, I would observe, sometimes I would just observe what they naturally want to do. And then I would just start fine-tuning their movement. I would see how they're doing on the monkey bars. I'm like, why don't you try this, just try this little way. Like, oh, okay. And because, kids, they want to play. And their play, just like puppies and wolves and lions and tigers, their play usually has some kind of useful purpose later on in their life. So we want to encourage that. So sometimes my classes were, here's exactly how to do things like kettlebell stuff. Mostly, I was like, here's exactly how to do it. Here's the exact technique. This is strict. This is where you do exactly how I'm telling you to do things. And then there's other things where I'm watching what they're doing, and then I just try to tweak it a little bit. And so he was coming for a while, and then his sister started coming, and she was a few years older than him. She still is. And she was very active also, very dynamic kid. She could, so if he was like 10, she was like 13, I think, something like that. And so they were really fun to work with, and they helped me to develop how to teach a kids class. Because you can start off with a plan, and that doesn't mean it's going to happen, and that's okay. They made me better by being difficult sometimes. And one of the ways that they would interact with each other was like sometimes they'd be getting along, but then they would kind of fight a lot too. I mean, they're brother and sister, and so sometimes it was just them coming, and there were other students coming in also. But I'm going to get to that. But there was a time it was just both of them, and they were just fighting the whole time, just arguing, and they were both very sensitive kids, and I mean that in a good way. But they would cry, they would be emotional. I'm not. That's not bad. That's good to a point, right? But they're kids, and them being sensitive, I think, is a good thing. And so they were arguing a lot this particular day, and like what I was trying to do wasn't working. They didn't want to do whatever it was that I was trying to do, and so then I thought, okay. Well, then they're like, kind of like splitting off from each other, and they're mad, and I thought, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk this out, and we're just going to figure out what's going on here. And so we sat in the grass by little saplings, and the trees just starting to grow, and just talked through some stuff. And I kind of started to see what the root of the problem was. Problem. Is it a problem? Starting to see like what the root of the issue was. Whether it's a problem or not, I don't know, because you use that to develop yourself, your skills, and so part of it was, she was a few years older than him, and sometimes he'd be wanting to play with her, and she didn't want to play what he was wanting to play. She likes different video games than him. Sometimes she wants to like be by herself and do something, and he doesn't want to be by himself. He wanted to hang out with her, and so there was some of that where she was just a little bit older, a girl, and just not quite lined up with what the 10-year-old boy wants to do. And so I thought that was interesting. So we kind of got to figuring that out. And then there was some more that I saw that I'm not going to talk about. Nothing. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. But there was like something else that I saw, and well, I will talk about, because I'm not naming names, so I think it's okay. But and if it's not okay, that's kind of what the show borders on a lot of the times. But anyways, so they have different dads, and one of them, the dad lived kind of far away and didn't make the same kind of effort to be in his child's life. So some of it, when I won't say which one it was, I don't want to give any hints to it, but one of the kids would be off with their dad, and the other one's dad isn't even calling, and so I saw some of that kind of coming up when we were talking. So instead of trying to do a workout, instead of trying to, squat or do pull-ups, we were talking about that kind of stuff. And yeah, they were really neat kids. They were really, really cool to work with. And so then there was another mom that contacted me, and her son has hypotonia, and it's like a muscle thing. Like the muscles aren't as developed, so he's like not as strong and developed as like the other kids, and so he was kind of embarrassed because he couldn't run as fast, and his muscles just kind of like give out on him, and so she didn't know if he would be able to participate in the class. And so she sends me a message, and like one thing that I really liked about what she said was, I want him to be able to get as strong as possible. Yes. So I sent her the message back. I was like, I love it that you said it that way, and I promise that that's going to happen. And so I was like, if you want, we can start with a one-on-one session so I can see what's going on. I can take time to just observe him and I can see how things are. And so we did that. And I ended up joining a bunch of Facebook groups, like parents of kids with hypotonia, because I wanted to like see kind of like what they were going through, kind of like what it was about. So I joined a bunch of these groups, and I was reading through the posts and several different ones. And so I did that because I wanted to really get it. Cause I wasn't really familiar with that before. So I wanted to understand not only the condition, but the effects that it has on parents, the kids. Like, maybe are there things that like you don't say, or there things that you know, like blind people, for instance, you're not supposed to change the way you speak for them. You ask the blind person if they want to watch a movie. Don't ask the blind person if they want to listen to a movie. Ask them if they want to watch it. Trust me, I've known blind people. That's what you do. So it was in this kind of spirit that I was looking, and I joined these hypotonia groups for the parents, and so he comes to the session. We do this one-on-one session, and I'm kind of like seeing what he does naturally, seeing how he runs, seeing how he, just moves, and like, yeah, he can definitely go to the kids class. And so he was I think 10. And pretty inspiring. And he was usually trying. So sometimes, I mean, they're kids, so your expectations cannot be the same as an adult. But for the most part, I was really proud of his effort. And some of my favorite, I have lots of favorites, but he went from embarrassed to showing off his biceps and stuff. And he was able to end up deadlifting more than his body weight, quite a bit more. And his mom come to pick him up, and he's his mom would pick him up, and he was like showing off how much he could lift. And so like at first, like the lowest weight of kettlebell I had was 10 pounds. And he was having trouble doing a lot with the 10 pounds, like pressing it overhead especially. And so she ordered a 5-pounder. His mom ordered a 5-pound kettlebell and brought it so he could use the 5-pound one. And so that's what we started with that. We were doing stuff with the other weights too. And then he went from not really being able to press a 10 to being able to he pressed two 15-pounders at the same time overhead. He may have ended up doing more than that too, with one arm. But it was really cool. And he ended up moving, and I have that 5-pound kettlebell, and I'm going to keep it forever, I think. And there was this another kid that came in, and he was well, he was well, in Ayurvedic terms they would call him like kapha. So he was like he was carrying some extra weight. He had some extra fat on him, and he super sweet kid. He was always eating carrots. Every time I turn around, he's supposed to be doing squats, and he's eating carrots. He'd be like, I'd hear this bag rustling around, and I'd turn around, and he's digging carrots out of his pockets. Like, you're supposed to be doing squats, not eating carrots. But he, like, starting out, his movement patterns weren't so great, and so he was kind of like a reluctant, like part of like this kapha body type is not really not really inclined towards the extreme, physical exertions. But he did like this. We did like sumo wrestling and stuff outside, so he was into that. He was into some different things. So sometimes when you're teaching kids and you're just like running into a brick wall, well, what do you want to do? Figure out what they want to do. And if they're wanting to do something else that's active and healthy, go with it. Just go with it. And of course, steer them in whichever direction you think is best. I still want they still need to learn these movement patterns. It's going to affect their whole life. How it literally affects every movement for the rest of their life is learning these movement patterns. Every single movement for the rest of their life can be better if they learn proper movement patterns. And so I remember we were working on this squats, and sometimes his kind of like will would sort of give out. He wouldn't even come up all the way from the squat. He'd just like drop the kettlebell. And but then I remember I was talking to someone, one of the adults, and I saw in the corner of my eye him just nail this beautiful squat with holding the kettlebell. And I just looked over and I said, yes, that's it. And it was so cool to see him to see him put the work in. Everybody has like different kinds of like work ethic and stuff. And so maybe like when it comes to like computer stuff, maybe he has a lot more discipline than me. And like, oh, I can't get motivated to do that. Oh God. Oh no, I don't want to do that. And that, people have the different things that get them excited. But for him to put in all that effort and to hit that squat, that's a moment, some of these moments that they really stick with us. And that was one for sure. And him sumo wrestling, and that was all cool. But into other kinds of wrestling. But anyways, that was really neat to see his development that way. And there was another student. He was the youngest one. He was 7. and I'd be teaching like kettlebell stuff, and sometimes we'd use dumbbells too. And man, his style looked like he was naturally like doing like what a lot of the old timers do, like you see around like the 1900s. And I'd show him a technique, and just like the way he would do it would look like these old time pictures. And it was interesting to me what could make him do that. And yeah, he was, at 7 years old. My class age cutoff was 8, but I made an exception. And he, yeah, it was really interesting how that worked. Like, where does that come from? Like, why? So I remember asking his parents like what their um, genealogy, like their ancestry, like where they're from. Uh, yeah, and his sister was coming, and she was into like dance stuff. And so then there were some other just a couple more to talk about, and then I'm going to talk about what I'm doing next. But so there were another brother and sister that I trained, and they were the only ones that passed my freestyle kettlebell training kids level 1. It was strict standards, and they were the only ones that passed. I don't know how much I'll yeah. So their development over time, they were the most consistent with me for the longest period of time. A lot of these kids they're consistent for a little while, and then they have other sports, they have other things, like some have moved, some have different things happen, but they were the ones that were consistent the longest. And it's pretty amazing what they were able to accomplish. And I had part of the classes I taught, like this after school thing, part of the time. We tried it for a little while, and it was like an hour and a half. And then right after that was like a 15-minute break, and then into the regular class. So it was like 2.5 hours of class. And so part of that class, like the after school thing, we were learning how to like build fires and do a bunch of different stuff. But anyways, I'm not going to dwell on that part of it. There was another cool thing that happened. There was like another class that came in, and they this big group. They got divided up into some other instructors doing some other stuff. And what I was doing was animal movements and this wrestling game. And so like with animal movements, I've told this story on the show before, but it's worth repeating. It's epic. We were playing this wrestling game where, starting off with animal stuff, I would say like, okay, what's your favorite animal? And then one of the kids would say whatever it was, tiger, wolf, whatever. Like, okay, how does that animal move? And then so it's their turn to teach the class for 30 seconds or so, whatever it was, of teaching this animal movement. It didn't have to be perfect. A lot of their animals moved exactly the same, pretty much. Then we started playing this wrestling game, and the game is like you kind of like face off in this push-up position. So your hands and feet are on the ground, and you're head to head. And then the idea is you try to get your opponent to touch anything but his hands and feet to the ground, and you do that like by pulling the arms. So you reach out, you grab the wrist, and you try to off balance. And so there were a bunch of parents there, so the parents were getting involved, and the mom is wrestling with their son, and the dads are, it's the daughters, and then all kinds of uh, craziness. And it was so fun. And then at the end, it's like, okay, who's the strongest? And the biggest boy raised his hand. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see this other hand come up. And it's this girl. It's about half his size. Like literally probably half of his weight. Now, if he weighed like 150, 160, she probably weighed 70, 80, something like that. I don't know exactly, but it was that big of a difference for sure. He was a lot bigger, taller. And she raised her hand after he raised his. I was like, okay. And then it's your guys' turn to go. And so there's a bunch of people watching. Probably at least like 20 some people watching. And all eyes are on them now. Before it was like, a bunch of people wrestling at the same time. A bunch of people paired off. And they go back and forth, and you think he's going to win, and then she regains her balance, and you think that she's going to win. He regains his balance, and it becomes this epic battle that lasted a long time. The crowd is going crazy. And back and forth, back and forth. And they were both being completely fair in the rules. Neither one of them were bending the rules at all. And then she reaches, she grabs, pulls, and down he goes. She beat him. And the crowd went nuts. It was awesome. And the boy even kind of had a look on his face like, yeah, I can't even be mad about that, because that was legit. And he did well. He did great. But that story couldn't have worked out any better. It was like, oh yeah, the boy that's twice as big beat the girl. Yeah, well, let's write a story about that. But I don't remember her name. I started referring to her as Chainsaw. So in my notes, I have all the other kids' names written down, which I wasn't saying. And her name, Chainsaw, saving that story for last. Because I think of him like this big oak tree, this big, strong. So I wanted this episode to just be a real, like a way to honor the whole class. Like 2 years, there was so much going on there with the adults, and I didn't even get into like the adult stories, and I probably won't. I mean, they've had great results too, and to me, there's just something that's a little bit different when you have it's just something different about the kids and working with them. And as teachers, we get to like really care about these kids, and so it's this kind of like tough thing to give up this class. But just like Estes Tona playing guitar, like now it's over. This show is over, and he's gonna pack up his guitars, head to the next city, head to the next country, and just trust that the magic is going to happen again. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm not leaving the city or his country or anything. But what I am doing is I'm still training people one-on-one at the personal training studio. So if people do live in Indianapolis, you can send me an email. I guess the easiest one to remember, since you're listening to the podcast, is fitnessandconsciousness@gmail.com. You can also email me stuff about the show. And I do offer online training. I use Zoom meeting. It's kind of like Skype, but a little better. Should be better. It's supposed to be better. I could use Skype too, but Zoom meeting is pretty much how I prefer to do that. And people can record their episodes. I can record the episodes, and or I can record your sessions and then send them to you as a MP4. So your sessions they could be just consultation, where we just talk about how you should start your training. You know, what equipment do you have? What are your goals? What kind of space do you have? And then we can figure out what the best course of action is. And we can also do where I can actually demonstrate technique, and I can critique your technique, help you fine-tune your technique. So I'm currently certified by Strong First as a kettlebell instructor. I do believe I'm going to let that expire. I've passed the test twice. I've been a Strong First instructor for really close to 4 years now. In May it expires, towards the end of May, I think. I have nothing but great things to say about Strong First. If you're looking for a kettlebell instructor certification, I do recommend them. I can help you prepare for it. There are some other great ones. Steve Cotter is a great one. There's other good ones for sure. So I'm not quitting Strong First. I'm just not I'm just not going to get anyone else's certification anymore. I'm doing my own method. It includes Strong First principles. And it's just in this time, these decisions that I'm making are because it's time for me to just do my own thing, my own branding, and not be under someone else's certification anymore. There's nothing wrong with that. There may be a price to pay for that. That's okay. There's also going to be reward from that. And I'm in a position where I can figure that out. I think it's going to be fine. Really, most of the clients that I've had don't really care about Strong First. Well, or they didn't know about Strong First, I should say. But I've had quite a few that they did want a Strong First instructor, and a lot of times what it was they train on their own. They have kettlebells. They work out at their own house. They do, but they knew they weren't able to get the most out of the kettlebell. They knew their technique was off, and so they came to me and told me, "Hey, I just want like a few lessons." To make sure, and they almost always pick two techniques. So like when I'm asking them what they want, they're like, will you show me the snatch and the get up? Will you show me the swing and the get up? Will you show me the swing and the snatch? Will you show me it's almost always just two things that they ask, which tells me that I think that's a good way to focus on some things. But I do a lot more than teach two techniques. The method that I have is fluid. It is a freestyle. The method is the philosophy of it is written out. It's expressed, and it is fluid. I'm not afraid to add or discard as I go along and as I learn more. Because even though I'm not getting another certification, it's not because I think, oh, I already know everything. I don't need any more instruction. I've got it all figured out. I started as a trainer in 1999. I've studied this stuff almost every day. I've put it into practice with many, many students from 7 years old to like 80 something years old. I don't even know the oldest, probably 80 something, I think. And from very athletic to some developmental problems, some, like one of my clients, he was in his late 60s when he started with me. He was using a cane. He was able to quit using the cane. He ended up going into a nursing home where he had to use the cane again. But my method, it's effective because what I'm really, I think I'm really good at doing, I am good at progressions. And so there's still plenty of people that I'm studying right now. Not a day goes by. I've studied today. But it's just time for me to do more and more of my own thing. And I believe I've earned it. And it's time, and I keep getting nothing but encouragement from my friends, the people that I've talked to a little bit about these decisions. Like canceling this class was a huge decision. It felt like the right time, though. Just like the Estes Tona concert, he just said, when it's done, it's done. There's no encore. Like, this is it. And so I can have that 2 years of classes from all these kids' stories, and it's just like scratching the surface of these stories. And I can just put that and to the side and be like, that was epic. And so maybe I'll start a group class again. I'm talking to a friend of mine about getting our own place, our own gym. She teaches yoga. I have some other friends that could possibly be interested in going in on something, but I'm not in a big hurry for that. I teach at a personal training studio now in Broad Ripple. If you're interested in training with me, send me a message, fitnessandconsciousness@gmail.com. I do have some room in my schedule. I just freed up some room with these classes, and focusing more on the podcast also, because the podcast has been growing steadily from the very beginning. Last month, so analytics come in from different spots. There's like YouTube, and then there's like the audio only, and but as far as the audio only, which is most of the listens, doubled from December to January. January's numbers were twice as big as December. And it had been growing steadily since the beginning. There was like one month was kind of an anomaly when I had, I had Alberto Galazzi on. And people went crazy for that show. I knew that he was a popular trainer, but I wasn't expecting that yet. So he's the one that runs my graph from going from the bottom left of the page, or bottom left of the graph, to the top right. There's like this one spike in the And that Spike is Alberto Galazzi, he's a tack fit instructor. I'm looking forward to having him on again, and we've talked about it. But besides his incredibly popular show, it goes from the bottom of the graph, bottom left, to the top right, and it's just been amazing. So it deserves more of my time. It deserves more of my effort. And so there's some things that I'm trying to figure out. I'm thinking of doing like some live streaming. So maybe I'll have a show. Maybe I'll do a live stream like once a week, or I haven't quite figured it out yet. I'm also going to spend some more time on so those live streaming, people can support the show. The show is on Patreon. It's Patreon, and it is a viewer-supported platform. You can watch the episodes for free, or you can become a patron for as low as $1 per month. You can watch for free if you want to contribute. Then that is there also. People can also do that on Podbean, Podbee, Podbean, Podbean. That's an app. What else? On Twitch TV, I just started putting some episodes on Twitch TV. That's one of the things I'm thinking of live streaming on. That's mainly what it's for. But I do have, I think, 4 episodes up on Twitch TV. Hard telling how many by the time you hear this. But on Twitch TV, it has a PayPal button, and there's a way to subscribe. And I'm still getting used to. I'm still learning about Twitch TV. To me, I don't quite. There's some stuff I just don't understand about it. It's taken me a little bit to figure that out. I'm also going to be putting more videos on Instagram because I want to have more free content out that's useful, training, technique, advice, and I want to have more ways to make money from it also. So more ways to get free stuff, more ways to make money. So this is a really exciting time, and I'm really grateful for everyone that was coming to the class, and they're the ones that really make it what it is, because I can't teach if there's nobody to learn. A little bit from the prophet Khalil Gibran. Then a teacher's sorry, a little stumbling over my words a little bit. Then a teacher said, "Speak to us of teaching." And he said, "No man can reveal to you but that which already lies half asleep in the dawning of your knowledge. The teacher who walks in the shadow of the temple among his followers gives not of his wisdom, but rather of his faith and his lovingness. If he is indeed wise, he does not bid you enter the house of his wisdom, but rather leads you to the threshold of your own mind. The astronomer may speak to you of his understanding of space, but he cannot give you his understanding. The musician may sing to you of the rhythm which is in all space, but he cannot give you the ear which arrests the rhythm, nor the voice that echoes it. And he who is versed in the science of numbers can tell of the regions of weight and measure, but he cannot conduct you thither. For the vision of one man lends not its wings to another man. And even as each one of you stands alone in God's knowledge, so must each one of you be alone in his knowledge of God and in his understanding of the earth." Yep. And the man said, "Speak to us of self-knowledge. And he answered, saying, Your hearts know in silence the secrets of the days and the nights, but your ears thirst for the sound of your heart's knowledge. You would know in words that which gives. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words today. You would know in words that which you have always known in thought. You would touch with your fingers the naked body of your dreams. And it is well you should. The hidden wellspring of your soul must needs rise and run murmuring to the sea, and the treasure of your infinite depths would be revealed to your eyes. But let there be no scales to weigh your unknown treasure, and seek not the depths of your knowledge with staff or sounding line, for self is a sea boundless and measureless. Say not, I have found the truth, but rather, I have found a truth. Say not, I have found the path of the soul. Say rather, I have met the soul walking upon my path. For the soul walks upon all paths. The soul walks not upon a line, neither does it grow like a reed. The soul unfolds itself like a lotus of countless petals. And the priestess spoke again and said, Speak to us of reason and passion. And he answered, saying, Your soul is oftentimes a battlefield upon which your reason and your judgment wage war against your passion and your appetite. Would that I could be the peacemaker of your soul. Would that I could be the peacemaker in your soul, that I might turn the discord and the rivalry of your elements into oneness and melody. But how shall I, unless you yourselves be also the peacemakers, nay, the lovers of all your elements? Your reason and your passion are the rudder and the sails of your seafaring soul. If either your sails or your rudder be broken, you can but toss and drift, or else be held at a standstill in mid-seas. For reason, ruling alone, is a force confining, and passion, unattended, is a flame that burns to its own destruction. Therefore let your soul exalt your reason to the height of passion, that it may sing, and let it direct your passion with reason, that your passion may live through its own daily resurrection, and like the phoenix, rise above its own ashes. I would have you consider your judgment and your appetite, even as you would to loved guests in your house. Surely you would not honor one guest above the other, for he who is more mindful of one loses the love and the faith of both. Among the hills, when you sit in the cool shade of the white poplars, sharing the peace and serenity of distant fields and meadows, then let your heart say in silence, God rest in reason. And when the storm comes and the mighty wind shakes the forest, and thunder and lightning proclaim the majesty of the sky, then let your heart say in awe, God moves in passion. And since you are a breath in God's sphere and a leaf in God's forest, you too should rest in reason and move in passion. And an astronomer said, Master, what of time? And he answered, You would measure time, the measureless and the immeasurable. You would adjust your conduct and even direct the course of your spirit according to hours and seasons. Of time you would make a stream upon whose bank you would sit and watch its flowing. Yet the timeless in you is aware of life's timelessness, and knows that yesterday is but today's memory, and tomorrow is today's dream. And that which sings and contemplates in you is still dwelling within the bounds of that first moment which scattered the stars into space. Who among you does not feel that his power to love is boundless? And yet who does not feel that that very love, though boundless, encompassed within the center of his being, and moving not from love thought to love thought, nor from love deeds to other love deeds. And is not time even as love is, undivided and paceless? But if in your thought you must measure time into seasons, will each season encircle all the other seasons? And let today embrace the past with remembrance and the future with longing. Those are all from the prophet. They're scattered throughout the book. I'm going to be wrapping the show up here pretty soon. I am already a torch lighting the paths of people far away. I must be as people picture me to be: clean, upright, transparent, charitable, fair to the oppressed, hard on their oppressors, patient in pain, strong and above all lowly passions. Save me, Lord, from myself. Cleanse me of all my impurities. Forge me in the forge of your right. It's also from Khalil Gibran. From this, that one's from The Nature of Love, a study by Andrew Dib Sherfon. Well, I think that's it for today. See you next time.